Hey, welcome. I'm trying something new here, a little series about the fundamentals of urban planning. Now, I'm not going to take the easy road out and just present everything as neutral. There's no reason to hide my ideology. Everything included here will be presented from a radical planning perspective. I'm calling this series Radical Planning 101. I'm a professional urban planner, and I don't think I say that enough. This is my job. I didn't wake up one day, get a bicycle, and decide to be really annoying about cities. No. I got up one day, went to graduate school, and decided to be really annoying about cities. I have a master's degree, and I'm a certified planner. I'm credentialed. Does that mean that I know your community better than you? Does that mean that when I plan, my ideas are always the right ideas? No, I don't think so. I know a lot about the planning profession, and I do have a set of skills that help people express their visions of the future. But do I think that planning has to come from planners? No, and no radical planner thinks that it does. In fact, radical planning theory was a reaction against the type of planning we're talking about today. Rational comprehensive planning. Don't leave, this will not be boring. Sometimes it's called synoptic planning or just rational planning. The rational comprehensive method became popular after World War II. By the 1970s, it was the only type of planning occurring at a meaningful scale. It operated on three primary assumptions. First, it assumed that planners could be trained to be rational and objective. Second, it assumed that the public interest was homogeneous, meaning everybody had the same goals and desires. Third, it assumed that the public interest could be readily identified and explained by a trained planner, typically without interacting with the public themselves. Here's how the process worked. First, planners would establish goals. These are the desired outcomes of the plan. Then planners would figure out all of the different ways to attain that outcome. These are called alternatives. Then planners would evaluate the alternatives. This is how modeling came about, if you're familiar. Essentially, it's the use of an algorithm to determine the impacts of change. Then planners would pick a single alternative, whichever one best optimized the desired outcome. This is called the preferred alternative. Finally, planners would implement the preferred alternative and monitor how well it met the goals of the plan over time. The rational comprehensive model was used to justify the displacement of and disinvestment in low-income and BIPOC communities. Planners were positioned as experts and their plans as objectively in the public interest, but these models and analyses had underlying assumptions. These assumptions were put in place by middle-class white planners and their white urban elite leaders. The challenge for planners was to craft the perfect process to prove the will of capital was in the public interest. When an elite group of technical experts, the planners in this case, are given the power to make decisions on your behalf without your consent, it's called technocracy. Proving itself entirely unable to solve the environmental and economic crises of the 1960s and 70s, rational comprehensive planning suffered endless critiques from women, low-income people, BIPOC people, activists, ecologists, and left-wing academics. It eventually fragmented into incremental planning, advocacy planning, transactive planning, radical planning, and communicative planning. By the time neoliberalism rolled around in 1980, the organized left had finally defeated rational comprehensive planning and replaced it with something so much better. Right? Right? When neoliberalism came along, rational comprehensive planning became one of its primary tools regarding order and the distribution of wealth. A rational analysis could easily be tweaked to show how privatization and public-private partnerships are in the public's best interests. Planning became a means of transferring wealth from communities to capitalists, and it still is today. You cannot tame this monster. Rational comprehensive planning is an evil weed, and it's becoming clear that there are no reforms that can save a profession built on these principles. Planners tuning in should have picked up on this already. The rational comprehensive process I outlined earlier is still the most prevalent form of planning today. There's been an injection of public processes, which we'll discuss in our communicative planning episode, but the core of the method remains. In graduate school, theory professors are likely to tell you that rational comprehensive is dead and gone, while in practice-oriented classes, students will implement that very process. In fact, our entire profession hinges on the belief that we can be trained to act rationally in the public's best interest. Two pillars of the rational comprehensive method. For most planners here in the States, graduate school and accreditation from the American Institute of Certified Planners is a requirement for a successful career, both of which are deeply rooted in technocratic knowledge and testing. The rational comprehensive method has a psychological element for urban planners as well. In holding on to the belief that we know best how to serve the public by virtue of having a master's degree, we can excuse ourselves or separate ourselves from the consequences of our actions. It's politically useful for planners to appear as neutral, wizened figures when in reality, most of us are actually accommodating capital over community. To these planners, I ask, who are you running from? And the answer is Michel Foucault. That's right, you're learning today. Rational comprehensive planning exemplifies Foucault's concept of power knowledge. The idea is that power comes from having and using knowledge, and in turn, power shapes what constitutes as knowledge. This should sound familiar. Planning students are given a very specific knowledge, a curriculum crafted by planners, academics, and politicians who have experience in navigating a neoliberal economy. With this knowledge, planners on behalf of capital have control over space. Planners further use power knowledge to restrict the potential for social movements. See, the rational comprehensive method is so reliant on its own analysis that it requires predictable outcomes. Predictable outcomes require a world devoid of social change. Planners can do this in multiple ways, including limiting places where large groups can gather, gentrifying out low-income people from the inner city, and working with the police to codify designs that increase surveillance. The rational comprehensive planner is separate from the world they're planning. They're an outside observer and interpreter of communities. They use their own understanding of that community and impose the will of capital on it. Because outcomes are predictable and planning is a constant iterative cycle, rational comprehensive planning is only concerned with the process of planning, not with creating a better world. Rational comprehensive planning isn't really planning at all, it's dominance over people and place. I hope you like this one. As I said earlier, this is the first in a series of short videos about the fundamentals of urban planning. I'm going to continue this conversation hopefully next month or so when we'll discuss the first break in theory from rational comprehensive, the incremental method. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share, and I'll see you later.